I don't know about you, but I love superhero movies. The story of hero versus villain, justice versus corruption, the underdog versus the big bad guy, and overall just good versus evil. Now take all those superhero tropes you know and love, and then just add a little bizarre twist to it, and then what do you get? You get this weird, but lovable hero by the name of Hentai Kamen. Now I know many of you, if you decide to watch this bizarre and strange superhero movie, you probably just utter two words. Oh, Japan. What's going on YouTube? My name is Ray from Asian Feminist, and I'm just a guy who loves movies. Now as you can already tell, I'm a fan of all sorts of movies. Good movies, bad movies, and definitely the strange ones. Now this movie will definitely rank up there with one of the strangest and weirdest movies that you will have ever watched. But I couldn't resist just spending my money to watch it in the movie theaters. I'm a fan of superhero movies, I'm a fan of strange movies, and admittedly, I love the first Hentai Kamen. Oh yeah, let's just mention that this is actually the second Hentai Kamen. That being said, let's give a little bit of background about this movie. Of course, as with many popular movies out in the theaters nowadays, this is based originally off of a comic. And of course, keeping up with the trend of all the film adaptations I watch, haven't actually read the original source material. And like I always say, you're supposed to enjoy these adaptations as a standalone experience anyway. Enjoyable, that is, if you're entertained by these kinds of stories. And hey, if you're like me and you enjoy these kinds of movies, hey, give me a high five. We're partners in crime. Now let's talk a little bit about the story of Hentai Kamen, Abnormal Crisis, or Hentai Kamen Part 2. The story takes place some years after the events of the first movie, so don't expect any kind of origin story because that's what the first one was for. So in part 2, Kyosuke, aka Hentai Kamen, is now a university student with his girlfriend Aiko. Now Kyosuke makes money on the side as a pizza delivery boy, but however he's horrible at his job. He's always on the verge of getting fired. And the reason is when he's off delivering pizzas, he gets sidetracked so he can do superhero things. And that of course prolongs deliveries and then in turn gets him in trouble with his boss. So it shows that Kyosuke is in fact trying to live on with his normal life, but he can't help but go and save people when they are in need of help. And continuing off of what happened at the end of the first movie, Kyosuke is still using Aiko's panties to transform. Oh yeah, if you didn't know, the way Kyosuke transforms into Hentai Kamen is he places a girl's panties right over his head. And keeping up with the tradition of Japanese superheroes shouting some kind of word to transform, think henshin or it's morphin time. Kyosuke says the words cloth out. Then Kyosuke's clothes rip off and then out emerges Hentai Kamen. Hentai Kamen, if you haven't figured out already, means perverted mask. And basically Hentai Kamen is a pervert, but he fights on the side of the weak. Now Aiko, his girlfriend, is a little bit uncomfortable nowadays. She thinks that they should move on and have a normal life. So Aiko asks Kyosuke for her panties back. She thinks that if she takes her panties back, then Kyosuke will have less of a way to transform into Hentai Kamen. Now as Aiko gets her panties back, a strange and, as the movie title says, abnormal crisis starts to happen. Basically, panties from all over the world are being sucked up by this strange and unknown force. Now, as Kyosuke sees all the panties of the world being sucked up, he also sees his source of power being depleted. And of course, that is the intention of the bad guys. They want to once and for all take down the hero known as Hentai Kamen. Next, Hentai Kamen has to think of different ways to overcome his adversaries. So far does the story intrigue you to watch it? Before you make your decision as to whether or not to watch it, let's talk a little bit about what I liked and what I didn't like about this movie. First, the stuff I liked. First of all, the cast. The sequel brings back basically all the surviving members of the first movie. That includes Hentai Kamen himself, Suzuki Ryohei. Now I don't know about you guys, but I have the biggest man crush on Suzuki Ryohei. The guy in the Hentai Kamen costume doing all those weird poses and doing all those catchphrases, yeah, that's him. That's Suzuki Ryohei. The guy has a baby face, so he can pull off being a high school student in the first movie and a uni student in this movie, despite the fact that he and I are the same age. Now Suzuki is absolutely hilarious in this one. Basically, Kyosuke, his character, is a pervert but in denial. Part of the conflict in the story is Kyosuke coming to terms with how much of a pervert he really is. Suzuki Ryohei does so well with his dual portrayal of Hentai Kamen and Kyosuke, so well that you wouldn't think that they were played by the same actors. Also brought back in this movie is Shimizu Fumika, reprising her role as Aiko from the first movie. Shimizu is just as adorable as she was in the first movie. Now aside from those two, Hentai Kamen also brings some new faces to the cast. One of them is Yagira Yuya. If you ever seen the super depressing film Nobody Knows, he's a lead character in that movie. Yagira Yuya was also in the movie Shining Boy and Little Randy. Basically, he's one of those actors that was really popular when he was young, but now is kind of obscure. Kind of like Macaulay Culkin. Now Yagira's character is kind of strange. Strange in the sense is that you don't know exactly what he is at first. He comes off at first as this kind of stalker, but you don't know if he's stalking Kyosuke or Aiko, so overall he's just a creepy character. But intriguing in the sense that you don't know what he's going to do next. And next, my personal favorite addition to the cast, Misaki Ayame. If you ever seen the TV series Cutie Honey or the Super Sentai series Tokume Sentai Go Busters. Yes, she's in both of those TV series and she is smoking hot. Her character in Hentai Kamen Part 2 is that she's a university professor and she happens to be the teacher of Aiko and Kyosuke. And hot plus university professor, you might ask? And if you're thinking what I think you're thinking, then the answer is yes. It does kind of go there. And I'm sure all you fellow Misaki Ayame fans will be crying tears of joy how basically the movie utilizes her hotness for the sake of the story. The villain of this movie is also a returning character from the first movie, and that is Muro Tsuyoshi as Ogane Tamao, which name basically is one big giant dick joke, as it means testicles boy. But yeah, he's back and he has some new tricks up his sleeve, but he's just as awkward and entertaining as funny as he was in the first movie. That leads me to the next thing I really enjoyed about this movie, and that it is freaking hilarious, but of course in a bizarre way. I mean, it's a superhero story about a pervert, you can't get any stranger than that. The guy has panties over his face, he's dressed in a mankini and wears fishnet stockings. And you know how superheroes like Kamen Rider defeats his enemies with a rider kick? Well, Hentai Kamen defeats his enemies in the most suitable way possible, well, suitable for him, and that he takes the enemy's head and basically just plants his groin into them, all the while screaming in ecstasy as it was some kind of vicious war crime. So the comedy expected to be in that realm of the gutter. But one thing in mind is that the movie doesn't show any actual sex at all. Instead, we get to see a half-naked guy dressed in panties defeat bad guys in the name of justice. There's also no nudity in this movie. Let me rephrase that. There is no complete nudity in this movie. There are a lot of moments when Hentai Kamen bows over, then you swear for money you might have seen something, but nah, it's just a figment of your imagination. That very type of weird and strange comedy you would feel very awkward watching while sitting next to your parents. Yeah, that's what this movie is all about. The movie has also plenty of moments with very interesting dialogue. A lot of those moments involve Hentai Kamen's catchphrase. In many of these situations, Hentai Kamen will be hidden just out of sight from the enemies. Like there's this one scene where a bunch of bad guys decide to rob a women's clothing store of its panties. They're reaching in the bin, feeling around for some panties, then they stop at this weird white lump. And then the bad guys say, "Hey, this panty's kind of strange." And then you hear this dark and menacing voice say, "Those aren't panties. That's my Oinari-san." Then Hentai Kamen springs out of nowhere and then starts fighting it out. Now if you don't have a clue of what Oinari-san means, just think of Inari Zushi. And yeah, it does kind of look like that if you look at it closely. It's not like you can't just steer your eyes away from it. This damn Oinari-san is in the center of the screen for a good portion of the movie. But one of my favorite moments of dialogue is the time when Aiko is trying to convince Kyosuke to stop in his superhero ways. Kyosuke tries to defend his actions by saying, "I'm not just a pervert. I'm a pervert of justice." And he says it with such a straight face, it is freaking awesome. But the biggest highlight of Hentai Kamen 2 was the action. And overall the quality of this movie, especially when compared to the first one. The first movie compared to this one seems like a really low budget indie movie, but they really upped the ante in part 2. The choreography and the fight scenes seem more better crafted, and the cinematography when it follows around the punches and kicks is absolutely amazing. And the special effects are actually quite good, enhancing the choreography with wind effects, lightning, and what have you. If you ever seen the first movie, there's this particular scene when Hentai Kamen is swinging around the city as if he were Spider-Man. But quick note, he doesn't use spider webbing, he uses S&M bondage ropes, and he seems to have an endless supply of them. But there's another Spider-Man sequence in this movie too, and it's actually quite fun. He's trying to chase down this giant robot and he's swinging through the city, climbing on walls, and you think, wow, it's like a Spider-Man movie. If Spider-Man was a hero who wore panties on his head, that is. And of course, it's not up to par with what you would expect from a Marvel movie, but hey, there's no complaints here. It was enjoyable nonetheless. And speaking of the action, and keeping up with the tropes of how Japanese superhero stories usually turn out to be, Hentai Kamen gets an upgrade, or a form change. This form change is called Oni Mode. Now what this upgrade constitutes of is a Tengu mask. A Tengu is basically this Japanese monster with this long nose. Think about that for a second. A long nose. Now what do you think he would do with a Tengu mask? I'm gonna give you a hint. He's not putting it on his face. Yeah. You're thinking about it right. Let's just say he uses his superhuman speed to bat away bullets with it. And lastly, Hentai Kamen, being somewhat of a tokusatsu movie, has pretty fun character and monster designs. The movie combines traditional tokusatsu suits with CGI to enhance the effects. And what we get as a result is a show of how much higher the production quality is in the second movie as compared to the first one. Now that we talked about my weird and bizarre sense of humor, let's talk about the things that I thought were not that great about this film. Aside from having many hilarious moments, a lot of the scenes in between those moments are really quite slow. At times you're just waiting for the story to pick up and move along, but you know, when it does pick up, it's fun again. Also, the type of humor in this movie isn't exactly made for everyone. You have Hentai Kamen ramming his crotch into all the bad guys' faces, and also moving very seductively, awkwardly towards the camera. I'm not gonna say that this style of humor is specifically Japanese, just that it is really kind of twisted. But like I said, this type of humor isn't a bad thing if you're the type of person who gets entertained by this. Just if you feel uncomfortable and squirmish if you see it on screen, then this film's humor might not be for you. Another bad thing I have about this movie is Shimizu Fumika's character. Although, like I said, she's cute and doing her part. But what her part is basically a cute damsel in distress. It's like her sole purpose in this movie is to get captured and to supply Kyosuke with panties. If you're looking for a story with a strong female hero, you won't find it here. The last bad thing I have to say about this movie is the story was really formulaic and pretty obvious from the start. You knew who was going to be a bad guy in the end, and there weren't really any surprises or twists along the way. Hell, there was even a scene where Kyosuke was badly defeated, and he had to go seek and receive training from this guy who is essentially Master Yoda. Admittedly, the whole training montage was pretty funny, but realistically, it didn't really offer anything new compared to the similar stories that came before it. So the bottom line is, when you watch Hentai Kamen Abnormal Crisis, you watch this movie as a bizarre yet fun superhero action flick, and not so much as a film with a realistic story or realistic premise. But hey, will you enjoy this movie as a comedic and fun action experience? You probably will, as I have. But don't expect to be impressed with this formulaic story. But hey, that's just my thoughts on Hentai Kamen Abnormal Crisis. What are your thoughts about this second Hentai Kamen movie? For those that seen it, has this movie surpassed the bar set by the first movie? Was it as strange and bizarre as you expected or as you wanted it to be? For those that haven't seen this movie, what kind of things are you expecting to see? Whatever your thoughts are, leave a comment below. And don't forget to subscribe to Asian Filmist for more reviews and discussions on Asian films. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and also subscribe to our email newsletter so you can receive a free copy of our ebook, The 108 Asian Films to Watch. And once again, my name is Ray. I would love to hear from you on Twitter. And that's about it. Alright guys, I'm about to watch another movie. I'll be back soon. Promise.